There are cells in San Quentin State Prison that were not designed for movement. They were designed for containment. Inside the adjustment center, individuals can be held in conditions that sharply restrict human contact, environmental stimulation, and physical autonomy. These units have historically been used for administrative segregation, disciplinary housing, and, at times, for those considered high risk within the institution. The dimensions of a typical cell in this unit are approximately 4.5 by 9 feet. Concrete on all sides. A solid steel door. No natural airflow. Light enters from a fluorescent fixture controlled outside the cell. In many cases, the light remains on for extended periods, sometimes continuously depending on operational policy at the time. The individual inside does not control it. Movement is limited to what the space allows. A few steps forward. A turn. A few steps back. This is repeated, often for hours. Then days. Then longer. Historically, individuals assigned to such units could spend up to 22 to 24 hours per day inside these cells. Out-of-cell time, when permitted, is structured, brief, and closely supervised. It may involve placement in a separate, enclosed yard space, often referred to in correctional records as a dog run, with high walls and minimal visibility of the outside world. Direct human interaction is restricted. Communication occurs through doors, through slots, through brief exchanges during escort procedures. In official reports and litigation records, prolonged isolation in such conditions has been associated with measurable psychological effects. Clinical studies, including those cited in U.S. federal court cases, have documented symptoms among segregated inmates such as anxiety, hypersensitivity to stimuli, difficulty concentrating, and in some cases, perceptual distortions. These findings are not specific to one facility. They are consistent across multiple correctional systems where similar housing practices have been used. At San Quentin, the adjustment center has existed in various forms for decades. Its role and operational policies have evolved over time, particularly following legal challenges and broader corrections reform efforts in California. In 2015, the state entered into a settlement agreement in a case known as Ashker versus Governor of California, which addressed the use of long-term solitary confinement across California prisons. The agreement placed limits on indefinite isolation based solely on gang affiliation and introduced step-down programs intended to transition individuals out of segregated housing. Even with these reforms, restricted housing has not disappeared. It has been modified, reclassified, renamed in some cases, but the fundamental architecture remains. The same doors, the same walls, the same spatial limits. Inside these cells, time is not marked by activity. It is marked by routine. Meals arrive through the slot. 3 times a day. The tray slides in. The slot closes. There is no dining area. No variation in setting. Only the repetition of the same motion. Across extended periods, individuals develop methods to cope with the monotony. Documented accounts from incarcerated individuals describe structured personal routines. Pacing, reading when materials are available, writing, or engaging in quiet physical exercises within the confines of the cell. Others report counting, tracking time in small increments, minutes, hours, days. There are no windows to the outside environment in many of these units. Natural light, when present, is indirect and limited. Seasonal changes are not always perceptible. The passage of time becomes abstract. Correctional staff operate within strict procedural frameworks. Every movement is logged. Every door opening is controlled from outside. Security protocols dictate posture, positioning, and compliance during any interaction. When a cell door opens, it does so under supervision. Hands are often required to be visible. Restraints may be applied before movement occurs. These procedures are documented in institutional policies and training manuals. They are designed to maintain order within a high-security environment. But for the individual inside, autonomy is minimal. Decisions are made externally. Schedules are imposed. Access to programs, when available, is limited and conditional. Over extended periods, this environment can alter how individuals respond to external stimuli. Clinical literature referenced in correctional oversight reports notes that individuals exposed to prolonged isolation may experience difficulty readjusting to social interaction. Simple exchanges can become overwhelming. Noise levels that would otherwise be considered normal may feel amplified. This is not speculation. It is recorded in medical and psychological evaluations conducted within correctional systems. San Quentin itself is one of California's oldest prisons, established in 1852. Its infrastructure reflects multiple eras of penal philosophy. The adjustment center represents one of the most restrictive environments within that system. It exists alongside general population units, educational programs, and rehabilitation initiatives. But it operates under a different logic. One centered on control, containment, separation. For those held inside, the experience is defined less by events and more by absence. Absence of movement, absence of interaction, absence of change. And within that absence, the mind adapts. Sometimes in ways that are measurable, sometimes in ways that are not fully understood. This documentary will examine those conditions in detail, through verified records, through documented accounts, through the structure of the institution itself. If you are here for factual, evidence-based insight into real prison systems, you can follow this series as it unfolds. Because what happens behind these doors is not imagined. It is recorded. And it continues. Waiting inside spaces like this. Until the door opens again. In San Quentin, movement is not a casual act. It is a regulated process. Every transition from one space to another follows a sequence defined by policy, training, and institutional experience. These procedures are documented in correctional manuals and reinforced through daily repetition. For individuals housed in high-security units, leaving a cell begins with instruction. A command is issued from outside the door. The individual is required to turn, face away, and position their hands behind their back. The door does not open fully. It opens just enough to allow restraints to be applied. Handcuffs are secured before any step is taken into the corridor. This process is designed to minimize risk, not only to staff, but to other incarcerated individuals and to the broader operation of the facility. Once restraints are in place, the door opens further. Movement is slow, measured. The individual steps out under direct supervision. Positioning is precise. Officers maintain distance and awareness, often standing at angles that allow visibility of both the individual and the surrounding environment. These procedures are not improvised. They are consistent across shifts, logged, observed, in some cases reviewed through internal oversight. The corridor itself is part of the system. Its design limits visibility and access. Doors are spaced evenly, each one identical, each one controlled externally. There are no unmonitored areas in these units. Cameras, where installed, supplement direct observation. Every movement passes through layers of control. When an individual is escorted, the route is predetermined. There are no detours, no unplanned stops. Destinations are limited. A shower, a medical appointment, a designated exercise area. Each location operates under its own set of procedures. Showers, for example, are not accessed freely. They are scheduled. The individual is escorted, often still in restraints, to a separate stall. Time is limited. Once completed, the process reverses. Restraints are reapplied if removed. The individual is returned to the cell. The door closes. The lock engages. Exercise follows a similar pattern. In high-security housing, it may take place in enclosed outdoor units, rectangular spaces surrounded by high concrete walls, sometimes with partial metal grating overhead. These areas are designed to allow physical movement while maintaining separation. There is no shared recreation in these settings. No group activity. One individual at a time. Or in some cases, individuals are placed in adjacent enclosures, separated by barriers. The duration is fixed, typically measured in hours per week, not per day. These schedules have been the subject of legal review and reform efforts in California. Following the Ashker versus Governor of California settlement, policies were adjusted to increase out-of-cell time and create pathways out of prolonged isolation. Implementation has varied, but the structure of controlled movement remains central to the operation. Inside the facility, sound travels differently. Footsteps echo against concrete. Keys and metal doors produce distinct, sharp noises. Voices carry through corridors but are often brief, functional, and directive. There is little room for extended conversation during movement. Instructions are clear. Responses are expected to be immediate. Deviation from procedure can result in the suspension of movement or disciplinary action. These responses are outlined in institutional rules and are part of maintaining order within a high-security environment. For correctional staff, the routine is continuous. Each escort, each door, each interaction follows the same framework. Training emphasizes consistency. Predictability reduces uncertainty. And in a setting where risk must be managed at all times, predictability becomes a form of control. For the individual being moved, the experience is structured by that same predictability. There is no decision-making in the process, no choice in timing, no variation in route. Even the pace of walking is often regulated. Too slow or too fast can draw correction. Posture is monitored. Hands remain secured. Eyes are expected to face forward or downward, depending on instruction. These details are not incidental. They are part of a system designed to reduce variables. Over time, repeated exposure to this level of control shapes behavior. Documented accounts from incarcerated individuals describe an adaptation to these routines. Movements become automatic. Responses conditioned. The sequence of events internalized. This adaptation is not unique to San Quentin. It has been observed in correctional systems internationally. Wherever similar control measures are in place, similar behavioral patterns emerge. In oversight reports and correctional studies, this has been described as institutionalization, a process in which individuals adjust to the structure of confinement, sometimes to the point where independent decision-making becomes more difficult over time. The implications of this process extend beyond the walls of the facility, but inside it is part of daily life. Movement in this context is not freedom. It is a managed activity, a temporary change in location, bound by rules that do not shift. The door opens. The sequence begins. The corridor is crossed. The destination is reached. And then the process repeats in reverse, returning to the same space, the same dimensions, the same door. If you are following this documentary for a deeper understanding of how control operates inside real prison systems, you can continue with the next scene as we examine another part of San Quentin's internal structure. Because here, even the act of walking is defined long before it happens, and rarely changes once it begins. Inside certain housing units at San Quentin, time is not measured by clocks. It is measured by repetition. There are no visible schedules posted on the wall. No personal devices to track hours. In many cells, there is no direct view of the outside environment. Natural light, when it enters, does not provide a clear sense of time of day. It changes gradually, often without sharp distinction between morning and afternoon. The primary markers of time are institutional. Meals, counts, occasional movement. Each occurs at roughly consistent intervals. But from inside the cell, these intervals are experienced rather than observed. Breakfast arrives. Then a period of waiting. Lunch follows. Then another stretch of stillness. Dinner marks the last structured event before the cycle repeats. Between these points there are no clear divisions. This structure is documented in correctional schedules and operational records. It is consistent across many high-security units. But its psychological effect has been studied more closely in recent decades. Research cited in court proceedings and academic literature indicates that environments with limited external stimuli can alter how individuals perceive time. Minutes may feel extended. Days may blur. Without variation, the distinction between one day and the next becomes less defined. Incarcerated individuals have described tracking time through indirect means. Some count the number of meals. Others note the frequency of security checks. In certain cases, individuals create personal systems, marking surfaces when permitted, or maintaining internal counts of hours spent awake and asleep. These methods are not formally part of the system. They are adaptations, developed in response to the absence of conventional timekeeping. Sleep patterns can shift. Artificial lighting plays a role. In some units, lights remain on for extended periods for security visibility. Even when dimmed, the presence of constant illumination can disrupt natural sleep cycles. Studies referenced in correctional health reports have linked such conditions to irregular sleep, fatigue, and difficulty maintaining consistent circadian rhythms. These findings are not limited to one facility. They appear across multiple jurisdictions where similar conditions exist. At San Quentin, the physical structure of older units contributes to this environment. The adjustment center, built in an earlier era of prison design, was not constructed with sensory variation in mind. Its purpose was control, not environmental balance. The result is a space where external reference points are minimal. Sound becomes one of the few indicators of change. Distant doors opening. Footsteps in the corridor. Occasional voices. These sounds are intermittent. They do not follow a pattern that can be easily tracked. Silence, in contrast, is constant. Extended periods pass with no interruption. In documented accounts, some individuals report heightened sensitivity to these sounds over time. A single noise can become a point of focus, something to measure against the otherwise uniform environment. This response is consistent with findings in sensory deprivation research, where reduced input can increase awareness of remaining stimuli. The absence of variation does not eliminate perception. It shifts it. Time in this context becomes subjective, not in the sense of imagination, but in the sense of experience. 2 hours may feel longer than they would in a more dynamic setting. A day may pass without distinct events to separate it from the next. This does not occur uniformly. Different individuals respond differently. But the pattern has been observed often enough to be documented in clinical and legal contexts. Correctional systems have, in some cases, introduced modifications in response to these findings. Increased out-of-cell time, access to programming, structured activities. At San Quentin, broader reforms in California have aimed to reduce the duration and intensity of isolated housing. These changes are part of an ongoing process. Their implementation varies by unit, classification, and individual case. Even where adjustments have been made, the fundamental experience of restricted environments remains. Time continues to be shaped by the institution, by its schedules, its controls, its limitations. There is no clock on the wall in this cell. No calendar. No visible horizon. Only the sequence of events defined by the facility, and the intervals between them. Over extended periods, this structure can influence how individuals think about time beyond the institution. Clinical observations have noted that individuals released from long-term isolation may initially struggle to recalibrate to environments where time is self-directed, where choices determine how hours are spent, where variation is constant. These observations are recorded in post-release studies and correctional health assessments. They are part of the broader understanding of long-term confinement. Inside the cell, however, those broader implications are not immediate. What remains immediate is the present interval, the space between one event and the next, measured without instruments, experienced without reference. If you are following this documentary to understand how confinement shapes perception inside real prison systems, you can continue to the next scene. Because here time does not stop. It continues. But not in a way that is easily seen, or easily measured, only endured, one interval at a time. There is no single moment that defines San Quentin, no event that captures its full reality. What exists here is structure, routine, control, and time moving forward in measured intervals. The adjustment center is only one part of the institution, but it reveals a core principle that runs through the entire system. Restriction is not temporary. It is designed, engineered into the walls, into the schedules, into the daily experience of those who live and work inside. Over the years, policies have changed. Court decisions have reshaped certain practices. The use of long-term solitary confinement in California has been reduced under legal pressure, including the 2015 Ashker versus Governor of California settlement. Step-down programs were introduced. Reviews became more frequent. Opportunities for transition increased. These changes are documented. They are measurable. But the physical environment did not disappear. The cells remain. The corridors remain. The doors continue to open and close under the same system of control. For those who pass through these units, the experience is not defined by a single day. It is defined by accumulation. Hours becoming days. Days becoming longer periods marked only by repetition. The effects of that accumulation have been studied, documented in clinical assessments, legal filings, and correctional reports. Some individuals adapt to the structure, develop routines, find ways to manage time within strict limits. Others experience measurable psychological strain, difficulty concentrating, disrupted sleep, heightened sensitivity to sound. These outcomes are not universal, but they are consistent enough to appear across multiple studies, across different facilities, across different populations. San Quentin is not unique in this. It is part of a broader correctional system, one that balances security, control, and, increasingly, reform. But within that balance, environments like this continue to exist. Quiet, controlled, unchanged in their basic design. For correctional staff, the system is procedural, defined by training, policy, and accountability. Each action is part of a sequence, each movement recorded, each decision shaped by institutional requirements. For incarcerated individuals, the system is lived, experienced in real time, within confined space, under constant structure, with limited control over daily life. These two perspectives operate in parallel. They intersect at the door, at the moment it opens, at the moment it closes, and then they separate again. Beyond the walls of San Quentin, time moves differently, freely, marked by choice, by variation, by access to the outside world. Inside, that contrast is not always visible. What remains visible is the immediate environment. Concrete, steel, light, routine. There is no final image that explains it. No single conclusion that resolves it. Only continuation. The door in front of you does not tell a story. It represents a condition. One that exists within a defined system. One that continues whether it is observed or not. If this documentary has given you a clearer view into that system, you can continue the conversation. You can reflect on what you've seen. Share your thoughts. Follow for further factual explorations into real-world institutions. Because places like this do not rely on attention to exist. But understanding them requires it. And the door remains closed until the next time it opens.